Okay, in this unit we're going to be talking about epithelial tissue. Well, we're talking about tissues in general, and there's 4 different types of tissues, the first of which that we're going to cover is epithelial tissue. Okay, so these are the four types of tissues that we'll be covering. First, epithelial, and then connective, muscle, and nerve. Epithelial tissue is, one, it's supported by connective tissue. It is avascular, which means it has no vessels, but it does have nerves. And it's regenerative, meaning that it can be replaced through cell division. So you'll be hearing these two terms a lot, simple or stratified. Simple means there is one layer of cell, a single layer, whereas stratified, there is multiple layers of cells. You'll also hear terms that classify them according to their shape. So squamous means it's flat, so you can see how this cell here is kind of flattened. Cuboidal means it's cube-shaped, and columnar means it's column-shaped. So you'll hear them referred to based on how many layers they are, simple or stratified, and what shape they are. So the first one that we're going to cover is a simple squamous. So this means that it is a single layer of flattened cells. And what this single layer, so since these layers are very thin, they allow for diffusion and filtration to happen. So substances can diffuse through these layers of cells. And they also help provide a slick, friction-free environment in the lining of different systems like the lymphatic and cardiovascular. You'll also find them in the kidney, heart, blood vessels, and other serosei. Here you see this is also simple squamous, and these are individual air sacs in the lungs, and this is the simple squamous that is lining these air sacs. Our next type is simple cuboidal, meaning we have a single layer of cube-like cells. So as you're taking these notes, keep in mind that you don't have to write down every single word, so I'll try to point out to you the important stuff for you to know about it. So these cube-like cells function in secretion and absorption, and you find them in a lot of ducts and different places that secrete things, like your ovaries or glands. So anything that has secreting abilities, you'll typically find these simple cuboidal cells there. So if you look closely here, you can see how these are kind of square-shaped cells. So I'll kind of zoom in here. So you can see, so here is a little cell. This one's kind of squished in there. So you can see they're very square-shaped. And then what they're kind of surrounding is a gland of some sort. Okay, and here you can't quite see the outlines as much, but you have these square cells that are bordering it. So these are simple cuboidal, and they're simple because there's only one layer. And you can always tell whether or not it's one layer or two based on how many layers of nuclei you see. So these big purple circles, those are the nuclei. And here we only see one layer of nuclei all around here, so that tells us it's a simple. And since it's cube-shaped, it's simple cuboidal. Okay, so here you can kind of see a comparison between a cuboidal and a squamous. Squamous has this very flat appearance, okay, it's making like this big flat layer, whereas the cuboidals are surrounding these hollow glands or tubes. Okay, our next type is a simple columnar. Okay, so again we have a single layer, and these are column-shaped cells, and their nuclei are kind of oval-shaped. You can find goblet cells here, which we'll talk about in a minute. These also function to absorb and secrete. And these type you'll find either non-ciliated, so they kind of look like this. And then when you've got ciliated kind, so again they're kind of column shaped. Here's the nucleus, and then at the top you have the cilia. And you're going to find that in areas like the bronchi, uterine tubes, and portions of the uterus and stuff. And what those cilia do is that they help move and flow things through passageways. Okay, here's a picture of simple columnar, similar to what I drew. You can see these big purple dots are the nuclei. And here, if you look kind of closer, you can see the nuclei that's right here at the top. So little tiny hairs. So this is a nucleated, or a ciliated columnar cell. Okay, we have what's called a pseudo-stratified columnar. So pseudo means false. So the reason why these are called a false stratified columnar is that they're not really stratified. So this picture here shows us a pseudo-stratified columnar cell, and it appears that we have a whole bunch of layers of cells. So the red dots are the nuclei, so they're all around, but it's just that each individual cell has the nuclei at a different height, and then they're all kind of squished together. So it appears you've got multiple layers, but you really don't. It's actually a single layer of cells. You'll find, and these typically secrete mucus, and you find these in sperm-carrying ducts and also in the trachea. Okay, so now we're to a true stratified layer. So stratified means there's multiple layers, and you'll always find stratified layers of cells in an area that typically sees some kind of abrasion. For example, here the stratified squamous, which is a tons of layers. So you can see how many layers this is of squamous cells, and it functions to protect against abrasion. So you can find it in the lining of your esophagus. So every time you swallow food, it's scraping away layers of cells, but since you've got hundreds more below that, you're protected, and they'll quickly redivide and replenish. So anywhere that you see abrasion, you'll tend to find stratified squamous. Here again is another picture of the stratified squamous. So you can see the multiple layers. This is a picture of the esophagus. Okay, it's stratified cuboidal and columnar. A stratified cuboidal is rare in the body. You only find it in some sweat glands and mammary glands, and it's really only about 2 layers. So you can see in this picture, I'll zoom in a little bit here. You can see how those are actually, it's just 2 layers. Again, the purple dots are the nuclei, and you just see 2 of them. Okay, so this is stratified cuboidal. Okay, stratified columnar is also limited in the body. It's found in the pharynx, the male urethra, and lining of ducts, and also as a transition area between 2 other types of epithelia. So you'll often find different types of epithelia all right next to each other. Okay, transitional. These are usually several layers. And these are unique in that they have this dome shape. So if you kind of look at this picture, see how they're bubbly at the top, look like bubbles? That tells you it's transitional. And you'll find this in the lining of the bladder. That way, as your bladder is filling up, it can stretch. Okay, here's another picture of transitional that you see a lot, and here is the dome shape. So as your bladder is empty, it kind of flattens and squishes down, and then as it fills up, you want those cells to be able to stretch, and these transitional cells allow it to do that. Okay, goblet cells function solely to secrete mucus, and you'll find them in the respiratory and digestive tracts, and these are important in that they help trap things that you breathe in or that get into your body when you eat different food, and then it helps kind of trap them in that mucus so that the body can. Okay, and here's a picture of a goblet cell. You can see they're very big and fat, and they're just full of mucus, and then that mucus will be secreted out onto whatever cell surface it is in.